on ADHD and its impact on your practice. And so I'm just pulling this up. Okay. So, like I said, or as Stacy mentioned, we are going to be talking about data management and material management. And our agenda for this evening, we're going to have some follow-up and reflections, follow-up questions and reflections. We'll get right into data management and material management, and we'll also discuss, we'll have a discussion, questions, and some takeaways at the end, okay? So some follow-up and reflections. What I wanted us to do was last week we spoke about problem solving and working memory, and there was some comments about what could be done. And I did some research, and here are some applications that can help with some of the mental skills that we discussed last week, and that we're going to be discussing from week to week. So you're going to get a copy of the presentation, so you don't have to worry about writing these down, but these are some programs and applications and games that you can use to help, like Lumosity. It helps with memory, flexibility, concentration. Again, things that we've talked about already, and those that we're going to be talking about in subsequent workshops. So there's the list that I provided you. Questions lingering from last week? Anything that stood out to you, or anything that you wanted clarification? Any comments, impressions, reflections from last week? Oh, Kathy.
I wanted to circle back to a technique that you told us to try, which is really purposeful self-care. So not just doing it because everybody says self-care is good, but really tapping into why you're doing the particular act of self-care and why it's a good tool in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I've been going on I say to myself, my stupid little walks, I tried to tell myself, you're out here because the sun helps your mood. You're also out here because the movement helps you be more still for the next hour that you sit in front of your computer, like really tying the specific benefit of that activity as I'm doing it so that I can reinforce it as a useful tool.
Absolutely. And have you found it, if you've kind of shifted that mindset of, purposely scheduling these self-care activities, do you find that it's been beneficial for you?
Absolutely, because since I'm talking to myself about why it's useful instead of just I should do it because that's what people say I should do, then when I'm stressed later in the day or the next morning when I lack motivation to maybe put on my sneakers and go walk, it's easier to say, yeah, but I reaped a benefit from it. It helped me feel happier to be out in the sun, or it helped me feel more calm for the next couple of hours that followed.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kathy. Anybody else want to share? So kind of going back to some of what are some changes? It sounds like Kathy, you've made some changes that have been beneficial for you, but anybody else want to share, any changes that they've come have done or implemented since our discussions have started? Or what actionable steps have people taken? Successes, challenges? Are there things that people have on this call have considered implementing but didn't? And maybe share, what are some of those barriers? Lynn.
So this isn't exactly answering your question, but I'm curious whether other people have felt this way too. I was diagnosed with ADHD, gosh, probably 20 years ago, almost. Yep. about that and have taken meds for a long, long time and thought that I had everything, pretty under control. And and then but I thought this workshop would be great, and it is great. But it's making me think about that I really don't have it under control. And these tips and practices and intentions are really helpful. But it's also sort of shaking me up a little bit, to have to think about it once again, like, and pay attention to, okay, this is an ADHD thing. This isn't just something wrong with me.
Hmm.
Um, so after all these years, it's sort of coming back, and I just, maybe someone could put it in the chat if they wanted to. I'm just curious if others who were diagnosed a long time ago have felt the same sort of thing come back.
Yeah, thank you, Lynn. V. Riker.
Yeah. Hi, Lynn. I was diagnosed at age 49, which was almost a decade ago. And I saw this and I thought, yeah, I should probably do this because I am a lawyer and I have ADHD and I haven't been in a permanent position in a long time. I keep doing doc reviews. I'm also a business strategist. I have a master's in business management and innovation, blah, 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 blah. I have lots of extra credentials. I'm highly successful and I make no money. And, I come back to some of the things we're talking about and I think, oh, yeah, I guess that probably is my ADHD talking. Oh, these other experiences are sounding really familiar to me. And part of me says, yes, but I've been successful. I have a happy life. I'm achieving things that are interesting and important to me, and yet I'm broke. and so I'm here because I do want to figure out what things I do want to change versus what things I think I must change in order to achieve the priorities that I have. And one of the things I've started since I did this is I'm doing a doc review now. I hate doing doc reviews in English. I normally do them in Norwegian, Danish, or Swedish, but they're not available these days with AI taking up a lot of it and lots of other issues. So I said, okay, I'll just do it. And I'm hating it. And I'm doing a fine job. Nobody's complaining. But this is not sustainable. So that's why I'm here. And I look at these things and I think, okay, my ADHD, I am so curious. I'm hyper curious. I need to find a role where I can be hyper curious. And so that's what I continually look for. But I'm here because right now I'm in between hyper curious roles.
And
So
thank
that's
you. And I think, what you're doing is the self-reflection piece. And, Lynn, to your comment of where you were diagnosed, whenever you were diagnosed and now, and you think that you have things under control, and now you're like, wait, now I'm older, I've been dealing with this, but yet there's still some things that you can absolutely implement and improve on. I think we could always look at that and areas that we can improve ourselves in. And, as I mentioned in our previous conversations, is ADHD is a marathon. To really treat ADHD, it's a lifelong journey. And so where things might be easier in certain areas or times, at other times it's going to be different. What worked for you at one point in your life, as you get older, things change, your thought process change, what your goals are going to be change as well. And I think at all of those sort of points of transition, you should always be reflecting. And being able to say, okay, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, what do I want to change? And so it's always an ongoing thing. I've been in the field in psychology since 2011, and every day I learn more and more about ADHD and how it affects children and adults. And so I think that we have to be lifelong learners. And by doing that we're able to reflect on what are things that we're good at, and those are things that we continue, and the things that are a little bit more challenging, we see and evaluate, are these things that I want to change, and how do I change them? But if I can't change them, being able to accept that part that you can't change as well. Um, so thank you for some of the comments so far. Tyra.
Hi, yeah, I was just gonna quickly weigh in on Lynn's comment because, and I don't know if this is maybe a function of like I was diagnosed later. I don't know how early you were diagnosed, Lynn, but for me, I feel, I don't know, I sense like a kind of like trepidation in what you were saying, and for me, it's interesting that it's been a little bit of the opposite because I feel like I've spent so long being like that this is just me and this is a problem with me, and now I can kind of I feel a little bit empowered being like, oh, it is me because like my brain is wired in a certain way. It's not just something that I have to, you know, deal with by myself or something that's a completely isolating experience. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, I hope that you know, you can feel more like tapped into that of like, you know, just maybe separating, um, letting you know the fact that we're all going through it help carry that burden of reassociating with, you know, that trouble.
Yeah, and being and um so just being able to say like this is my ADHD, and being just feeling empowered is really important. And I think if you feel more empowered, then that helps your mindset, and that definitely helps with some of the regulation, emotional regulation that we've talked about. And I keep on mentioning that attorneys work in very stressful work environments. And so being able uh, to harness harness some of the positives, where attorneys can with ADHD can absolutely be successful, but being able to harness some of that hyper uh, focus, creativity, thinking out of the box, being able to see things that other people cannot see. Those are strengths of individuals that have ADHD. So being able to harness those where in certain areas might be seen as differences or challenges, but being able to look at it from a more positive perspective, I think that really does help. But I think, Lynn, you're going to be a life, as long as you are breathing, you're going to be learning about yourself every single day. And so I hope that everyone else just realizes that and is able to take some time to just reflect on what does this mean for you, and what are you willing to make some changes or address if it's important to you. So great conversations and comments. Anybody else that want to chime in before we move on? Okay. So something that there was a question that was asked about what can be done when one is waiting for anxiety to decrease when feeling dysregulated. And so some of the things that I found that I thought was really interesting was, an article on 30 grounding techniques to quiet distressing thoughts. And we're not going to go through all of these, but definitely you have the link here. It is some stuff that we've talked about, like the 5 4 3 2 1, using your senses, and so that could be helpful. But that's more of a mental grounding technique. A physical grounding technique, an example would be, putting your hand in ice water. And why do you do that? It just distracts you from whatever might be on your mind. So, definitely would recommend for you to check these out if you are looking for some grounding techniques, and really trying to get into how do I control when I'm feeling dysregulated. And we've talked about how people on this call have described some of these symptoms as feeling overwhelmed or feeling stressed. And I would probably say that a lot of that would be due to symptoms of anxiety, or that stress. So when people are anxious, if the system, the the physical symptom in our body, the sympathetic nervous system is activated and is activated for long periods of time. It releases stress hormones, right? And so that's what you're thinking of. You're at the point of this isn't anxiety anymore. This is much more chronic. And so these techniques could absolutely help out with trying to challenge some of the distressing thoughts or things that you can do actively and intentionally to kind of break some of that up. Right? Any questions about that, or anybody willing to share what they've used to be effective in addressing some of their distressing thoughts, things that maybe we've talked about in the past couple of weeks, or anything that you've have found really specifically useful
Can I
that you
ask a
want?
question, please?
Sure, go ahead.
Hello? Thank you so much. Okay, did I hear you say, when we're experiencing what one might call stress and or anxiety, and really it's something more chronic, did you say that that's indication that our sympathetic nervous system is activated? Is that correct? Did I hear you say that correct?
That's correct. Yes. Mhm.
So, and the grounding techniques would be what brings us better place at parasympathetic.
That's
Like,
correct. Absolutely. Yeah. So, when we're faced with, adversity or in this situation where it requires for our sympathetic nervous system to activate. And remember, that is when we're in a situation that we perceive as threatening. Right. So if you're in the forest by yourself and you hear rustling in the bushes, your sympathetic nervous system is going to go live because you have to prepare yourself for whatever the danger is. So when people do have anxiety, that same system goes online, which then can be detrimental if it's always activated for long periods of times. And then so what our bodies naturally do is that when the threat is no longer present, our parasympathetic nervous system does the opposite,
hello?
right?
Hello?
Hello?
I cannot hear you.
Oh,
Are
can
you there?
everyone else? Hello? Can everyone else? Okay, I see Lynn shaking her head. So I apologize if that call didn't go through. Hopefully she'll be able to hear this afterwards. So I apologize for that. Okay. Any any other questions or comments? All right. So let's move on. Okay. All right. So what is data management? What is material management? Anybody want to take a stab at, what does that look like? Or what when you hear the words management, material management? Kim, oh, you're muted.
Sorry. Data management and material management is all of the stuff that is the bane of our existence, that is piled up around us, probably on our desks right now, and on our to-do lists, and the phone calls that we need to manage, and how to file everything.
Okay. All right. Love your definition. Thank you, Kim.
Yeah.
Fiona.
For me, it's somewhat. Kim put it much more eloquently, but it's what's on my to-do list, at the head of my to-do list almost every morning, or if I'm on top of things, it's the night before, and it's tidy desk, to-do list, and it's all about having a relatively tidy environment, putting like information of a new client intake I've just done over the phone, making a file folder, a paper one, making an electronic file folder, just and then the data management is, again, it's filing, both electronic and paper.
Thank you,
And it's a
Fiona.
bane.
Thank you, Fiona. Anybody else want to share? So Why is data management and material management important, especially for attorneys? And I can give you a hint. The next slide is going to be kind of the same slide that I've been sharing with every week. You know, why are these topics that we're discussing, why are they important for attorneys? And I don't think, Fiona, you might be still holding your hand up from last question, but Kim.
It goes back to everything from client satisfaction to the partners. Are they happy with what we're doing? Potential malpractice and really managing our practice. It's really the like the meat and potatoes of what we're doing. Can we get our work done? Can we get our products done? Can we get them out? And can we do it in a way that the stress of seeing all this stuff isn't causing us to just be so overwhelmed that we can't get things done?
Absolutely, thank you. Um, and Yeah, and that's really important for the work that you're actually doing. Right. And I think that it goes to, you know, what we've talked about in the past, you know, that client trust, right? There's that meeting deadlines. Just by you having data management and material management, helps reduce possible distractions, right? If you have your phone if you have the phone on your desk while you're doing work and you should be concentrating, that's a distraction, right? Or it could be a distraction, not always, but you know, you start thinking of why it's important, and it helps you be successful. Uh, Dina, thank you, Kim.
I just wanted to add a different perspective. I work in the court system, so we have case management and we have to keep these cases and all the information that comes with it organized. So that's, I just wanted to add that as a different perspective than the law firm. We're on the other side.
Thank you, Dina. Thank you. And so, you know, we talked about in previous discussions, um, why else is it important for data management and material management for attorneys? And it has to do with the idea of motivation. I believe it was last week or the week before we talked about what are the components to motivation and change. Okay, no takers. Okay. So what we discussed was one, that change is possible. Two, that there's a reason that we're doing this, that we're not doing these things just for because we want to do this, right? That there's a reason for that, and that there's a purpose for it, and that these are things that you can work on. They're actionable, right? So it's really important. Besides the things that we've discussed and laid out in the presentation, but also just more of this idea of helping our mindset. You're more likely to engage in these activities if you believe that it's going to be there's a reason for it, and you can actually take these steps, right? So let's talk about specific things that people can use, and we'll have a discussion afterwards. Okay. So when we think about data management is digital document management. And that could include some of the things that have been already said, but using like cloud services like Dropbox or Google Drive, being able to find somewhere that you can put all your documents that's shared, because if you forget something, at least you're able to access some of this stuff. You know, when you're doing folders, you know, organization of your folders and subfolders, right? The things should be labeled. You shouldn't have like new folder 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you're like, you don't know what it is. You know, being consistent in your naming conventions, right? Find something that works for you and stick to it, and setting up alerts and reminders. Okay. Calendar management, using a digital calendar like Google Calendar, Microsoft Outlook. And this is to manage all your appointments, deadlines, tasks, and color code things, right? Things that, if you're going to go see a client, make them one color. If you're going to be in court, make it a different color so that you can visually see the differences of what the appointments and tasks might be. Email management, using filters, the things that should go, that maybe are priority, should go into certain folders. And being labeled, and you can put rules and conditions that if you receive an email from this person, it goes into this folder. It helps automate. One of the things that we talked about in the past, in the other previous workshops, is automate, make things where you just don't have to figure out yourself. Like, you don't have to be actively doing this. You can put it in um, with conditions. Also thinking of not carrying over, messages from day to day, trying to clear up as many of the messages, and especially the ones that are urgent. Maybe, and again, prioritizing the things that really need your attention, like, hey, there's an important filing that you need to do, versus, maybe following up with a coworker about a question. And also being able, because sometimes, I don't know about you, but how many people here have like email boxes that have like thousands of unread messages, and sometimes they're just junk, but you have thousands upon thousands of messages, right? Clean that up. If you don't need something, unsubscribe to things, right? Many times our emails are added to listservs and junk mail, and be able to periodically just kind of clean some of that up. I mean, of course, I'm sure that some of your organizations already have some filtering systems in place, but obviously there are definitely things that go uh, slip through. So keeping that in mind. V. Riker, again, I see your hand up. Just wanted to see if you had anything to share.
Yeah, and I think some other people might have this issue too. I'm a paper person, and I'm also a digital person. I love technology, but the problem I find with technology is out of sight, out of mind. If it's filed away digitally, I've forgotten it.
Okay.
And when Blackberries first came out, my boss insisted I use a Blackberry, and from that day forward, I started missing more appointments because I kept forgetting. And I just wonder how other people deal with, you can't have Post-it notes everywhere, but you forget it if it's in the digital world.
I saw Michelle, if you want to add or share something briefly about what you use, and you're muted, just to let you know.
Oh, thanks for that.
Yeah.
I kind of have multiple systems. So I really like paper. Yeah, somebody put like paper and online calendar. So I have there's all these like really great planners out there that you can get like weekly, monthly, whatever. I like the one with the little lion on the front. So I use that. It lets me like, put I guess like less minute stuff in the month, and then like in my weekly spot, like, put like my appointments. And then on top of it, I have like my court cases and my work Outlook calendar with like reminders. And I also use Outlook, like the to-do list. Like I'll put important tasks in my planner, but also, on the to-do list. And if it's like something with a deadline, I'll put that in the task itself. And then I have my Google Calendar for like my personal stuff.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michelle. Um, I have a suggestion, but I want to see if somebody else brings it up. And then I'll let you know something that I'm thinking that could help for those that like paper, and how you can use that electronically too. Alicia.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. What helps me is the big desk calendar. So I can put it's right there on my desk where, I sit every day. And so when I do have an appointment, I put that on my desk calendar. Digital wise, my office started to use tasks in Teams, and I really like that because it sends me an email every morning that, oh, I have this task due in 2 days. I have this task due on one day. I have this task was due yesterday. And so it kind of like keeps that up to like, oh yeah, I do have that task. So I really, really like that tasks app in Teams.
All right. Thank you, Alicia. Anybody else want to share any insight or what's been helpful for them? Dina.
So I just started using something called the self journal, and it is amazing for someone like me who is ritualistic. I have to be ritualistic in everything I do, and it has multiple sections, which is a little overwhelming in the beginning, but then when you get used to it, they have a habit tracker, they have all these things, and I've been doing it for about 6 weeks, and they do 3 months at a time to set goals, tasks, etc., and it is a lifesaver.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Dina. One of the things that I have seen and maybe could be helpful is there are notebooks out there that, specialized notebooks that when you're writing into the notebook, they could actually change into notes electronically. So off the top of my head, I don't have the name of it, but I do know that there are uh, and they look like notebooks. So the people that like to write things down, you want to have it, eh, on piece of paper, but you also could have a backup that's electronic as well. So is technology out there that can translate some of your handwritten notes into an electronic form, so that at least you benefit from both areas or systems. Anything else? Kathy.
I find that for digital, using their alert system is what helps me. Because if I just put in the final deadline or the doctor's appointment, I too will forget it because it's not in my face. But if I alert 2 days before, or I set the alert an hour before, because that's how long it takes me to get to the doctor's appointment, then the digital becomes effective for me.
Okay. So being able to know maybe reminders well in advance, so before it's like the 11th hour or right before you're supposed to be in your appointment, doing it well in advance. So recognizing that helps you out. Yeah, great suggestions and feedback. Um, you know, we've kind of started talking about these already, and some people on the call have already mentioned this, but using task lists and to-do apps could really be helpful to keep the management of tasks in one place. I know Microsoft Teams does a nice job in putting tasks, and you can assign them to people within an organization, and it keeps people accountable. And so people that are within the same organization would be able to assign certain tasks, as I believe Alicia was talking about. So there are things that apps out there that could be helpful when it comes to data management. So things that you want to consider. What I did, I also thought about, attorneys have to track, right? I think somebody in the previous workshops had mentioned about, sometimes it's about tracking your time and, billable hours and your boss kind of figuring out, what's going on and why you're not billing enough. Right? These apps could be helpful where you just, put a project that you're working on and you put the timer and it just keeps track of what you're actually doing. Me personally, I've used the toggle track and it's really great. And I've done it for when I'm doing neuropsychological evaluations where I need to get reimbursement or for my client to get reimbursed through their insurance company. And so I have to keep track of all my timing, what activities from when I do a clinical interview to when I'm actually administering a test to when I'm writing up the results. All of that has to be tracked for insurance purposes. So like attorneys, I have to do very similar work as well. And so I personally have found toggle to be helpful. Is there anybody that on the call that has had experience with any of these tracking apps, or how do you track time worked on a project? Michelle, I see your hand, your thumbs up. I'm not sure if you are agreeing with.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was agreeing, like when I was a solo, I used Toggle Track and I really liked it.
thank you. Yeah.
Super easy to use, really user friendly, like not much to it. There's a button to start the timer and then you just click on the same thing to stop it. And yeah.
Yeah, and the good thing about Toggle, and I'm sure that with these other apps, I would have to assume that not only are they accessible on your on website, but you also have an app. Like I know the Toggle has an app through like the Play Store or the Apple Store. So these are things that are accessible that you can on the go. Right. So even if you're making a phone call to a client, that's an app that you should your tracking app should be kind of front and center.
I'm
And
so
so,
glad I don't have to do the time tracking thing anymore because like I already have to do case notes in legal server, and that is enough of a pain in the neck on its own. Like do not want to be billing my time.
absolutely. Thank you, Michelle. Anybody else who want to share their experience using a time tracking app or um, any other feedback? Okay. So note taking in legal research, digital note taking could be helpful, and there's some apps that could be helpful for those individuals and organizing the notes, right? So it's not just recording the information, but also being able to organize it, right? Putting it in, projects or whatever, if it's related to like court filings, like you make your notes to be color coordinated and organized that makes sense to you. And then using some template could be helpful. Um, One of the things that we keep on talking about is reflection, 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 self-reflection. And this is no different than what we've been talking about. Whatever systems that you have in place, you have to periodically adjust them, review them. See what's working, what's not working, in order to really know whether the systems that you have are really effective, right? So, how many individuals on this call regularly review and make adjustments to their data management systems? How many seek feedback from others? Right, because we could have the assumption that this system works, and then so you ask a colleague, and they're like, "Yeah, no, that system is really not effective for you." Or how do you know your system's working? Come on now. You all have data management systems and material management. Fiona. Oh, she put her hand down. Oh, Lynn, go ahead.
Well, if I can't find a document, then the system's not working. And so that's sort of what it comes down to. When I find myself frantically looking for something, I know that I got to step back and figure out what to do better.
Thank you. And I think that that's important, right? If you're frantically looking for something right away, every time you get that sense, frantically looking for a document, then you already know it's not working. So I think thank you. That's really important for reflection. Adam.
Oh, I'm on mute. Just to say that I'm more of a paper person myself. So even for this program, I use a different colored notebook. And when something is not working for me, I try something different. Like I put actual Post-it notes, or I create different colors in, say, Microsoft Outlook to help me organize times. And in addition to just in general, in reviewing things, in addition to the 15-minute reminder we automatically get, I might even put an appointment the night before saying, don't go to the office, go to X location instead, just so I don't organize things by mistake. So it's a constant game of trial and error.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Adam. Fiona, I see your hand back up. I'm not sure if you're going to put it back down, but go ahead.
Um, I didn't want to have it staying up too long, which is why I lowered it perhaps too soon. For me, it's there's two sort of things. Is my stress, where's my stress level? If my stress level is low, then I know, because I'm a solo practitioner, so my feedback loop is me. Is it just, am I finding things? Is everything flowing? Do I have my messages? Is my email inbox, say, below 200 as opposed to like 985, which is what it climbed to last week? Things like that is how it's basically sort of a state of mind. And then it's also, again, am I spending 3 hours trying to find a document? And one of the things I've learned is, don't try and find that document for 3 hours. Go back into your electronic files and just print it out again. That's so basic, and I don't know how it's taken me so long to learn it. But anyway, that's all.
And I think, Fiona, we've talked about a lot of these things. I think are things that people already know. But it's just, you have to be intentional about some of these things and saying, look, even if it sounds silly, like you shouldn't be looking for a document for 3 hours, especially when it's something that you can easily just reprint. Right. But understanding how your mindset, you were talking about if you're feeling a little dysregulated, that should indicate to you, hey, something's not working. And I think that that's really important when working and trying to figure out, are your systems working, and do we need to make a change? And so, when we think about regularly review, that's what it means. You want to do this weekly. Right? You don't have to do it daily, but you should do it, take some time, because trust me, the more you plan ahead of time, the easier your job is going to be. Right? You're not going to feel so flustered. You're not going to feel as overwhelmed. Of course, I'm not saying that you're not going to feel these, but the idea is that we're mitigating some of these things. We're reducing these symptoms and these differences and challenges so that you're more effective. And remember that our definition of success is about managing the symptoms, making them work for you. V. Riker.
Yeah, so this is, again, another thing that I don't know if other people have a problem with, but I find often when I do a big cleanup and I try to organize and I put things away, that's when I can't find things. And I know, okay, you're supposed to do it systematically. And it's like, okay, well, I thought I created the system as I was putting these things away. But I know the last time I saw that piece of paper, it was right there on my desk, 3 pages down, and I could have put my finger on it yesterday before I put it away, and now I can't find it.
Absolutely. And with disorganization, like for people that have ADHD, they can have five piles of just clothes, right? And so for somebody that doesn't have ADHD, they're going to be like, I don't know where the heck anything is. But for the person that has ADHD, is going to be able to find exactly where the item is in the five piles of clothes, right? And I think that's what you're referring to is, um, your disorganization because it's organized in your head, right? And so, but our in reality, the research actually shows that when you are in a cluttered environment, our brains actually work harder in order to declutter than if you just left everything like cluttered and disorganized. Our brains actually don't like that. And I'm not sure, I think I have alluded to it in one of our previous conversations, is that our brains like to categorize things, put things into this very neat way of just filing in our own brains. And so when things are not filed where they're supposed to, that's where the brain has to work over. And for individuals that have ADHD, that part of the brain is already underperforming. And so we're then adding to the underperformance. And so I think, to address kind of like, well, where do you put that information, or like, where did you put that document last? I think that's where you can kind of fine tune as to, well, where do you put your those documents? Do you put all your documents in the exact same spot, right? So do you file everything for a let's say for court in the exact same pile that you have like notes for your client, or do you keep them separate? And so maybe it's looking at fine tuning some of those things. Or the other thing is, maybe taking a picture, of where you put it last, right? If you know, and so we're going to get to some of these other points in the slides is, wherever you're working, keep it organized, but also take pictures of what your desk looks like or your work area looks like, because then at least you'll know you can refer back to things. And so use the technology that is available to you, and try to be able to say, okay, well, I know I put this here. Or if you know that you're going to come back to it, or that you're going to need to refer back to it, put further systems into place of where did you last leave it. I don't
I
know.
think you
Yeah.
hit the nail on the head with the 5 piles, because that's my organization. I know exactly what's in those 5 piles. And yet, if I try and impose somebody else's organization system on me, I can't keep it straight. I can't remember where they think these things are supposed to be, because in my mind, the file says, or my filing system says they should be there.
And I think you bring up another good point is, not everyone has issues with organization, right? Or disorganization. Is it a problem? How are we defining it? How is it impacting you? Right? Because if you have five piles and you are able to find what it is, find the information and where it is, then are you disorganized? Who's dictating that this is disorganized? Right. So that's another important part too. As I mentioned to you at the beginning of our time together, is you want to start reflecting on the things that give you the challenge, and you work and change those things that you want to change. You don't do the things that you don't want to change. But so there's always that reflection of what is your challenge, and not everyone with ADHD has difficulty with disorganization or issues with organization. So yeah, I think important comments. Um, so I wanted to bring up, when it comes to data management, is assertiveness and information management, and why is that important is, so an example would be, managing data. There's a lot of data that attorneys have to hold and they have to remember. And so, and you're being pulled in 5 million different directions. So what you do is to help out when individuals are giving you data, right, is to say, okay, give me a second. Let me go write this down. All right, then go back and read and summarize or confirm. Oh, did I get that right? Right. So if you were trying to jot down a client's telephone number, right, write it down, or they're telling you and say, "Oh, sorry, give me 1 second. Let me go get a piece of paper. Let me go get a post-it. Give me whatever it is that you write on, and then write it down. But then always check back with the person to confirm. Other things that you can think about, and so asking people to hold off and confirm that you have the information correct is an example of assertiveness. So you're giving people time to process the information that's being given to you. Right, you're not holding that information in your head, and as we talked about last week of working memory and some of the challenges that come with that. And ADHD is there is those symptoms where working memory is definitely impacted with ADHD. And then the other things that you can use to help out with is request follow-up emails of summaries or follow-up email summaries from a meeting that you've had. Or you can ask people, if there's a project that you're working on, maybe to ask the person, hey, why don't you give me a reminder email or shoot me an email in a week from today and just let me know to remind me that I have this to do, right? Use other people to help you out, right? And ask for help. I know that we talked about that in the past. So ask for a help, ask for follow-up email summaries. You don't have to hold all this information in your head, right? And you can also ask for help for follow-up. Tyra.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't know if other people struggle with this, and maybe this is just a personality trait, but I think this is such a key point, and I recognize that one of the things that has been so detrimental to my ADHD management is not feeling empowered to be assertive, to kind of, because I feel like I so clearly, if I was in a room by myself or if I could request anything and like not have any inhibitions about, like I know exactly how things should be set up to accommodate me. But when it comes down to kind of asking for it, I feel like there's a lot of like shame and embarrassment of like, well, other people are getting this quickly, or other people like don't need to ask for these accommodations. So, and I don't want to slow the team down, and I don't want to have to, ask the partner to do this a different way than they're used to. And so all of those things kind of, just wind up, I think, undermining assertiveness. But yeah, again, I don't know if it's like a personality trait or if there's like, some kind of maybe this goes to kind of like the shame aspect and like, like if you had a physical disability or an illness or something, maybe you just feel more empowered to be like, listen, I can't do this, like I need things a certain way. But I feel like with things that are invisible, it's so much harder to do that.
No, you're
Absolutely.
very
And
right. This is not just you. Yes, I just
oh,
want to let you know it's not a personality trait. Thank you, because I'm on the phone. I'm not on the computer. I couldn't get. Thank you. Didn't mean to interrupt.
yeah, no, no, not a problem. I was like, wait, where's this voice coming from? So I didn't see that, but thank you, thank you. And I think
No,
that,
thank you.
yeah, and I think that um, you're right in that there is still the shame and the guilt, and we talked about the gender differences with when it comes to guilt and shame, and how you view yourself, and you think that you can't ask for your work to accommodate these your needs. And I will tell you that that's going to be one of our discussions. I think our last discussion of the series is how do you ask for accommodations at work, and navigating that. Because I do think it's things that we could address and should be addressing, because a physical impairment or illness or disorder is not any different than a psychiatric disorder or ADHD, and thinking of neurodiversity. I mean, that is as important too. So, being there's reasons why there's human resources departments. But there's also the idea of how do you view yourself and that mindset that we've been talking about from week to week. Neva.
I just wanted to weigh in on that. I think how and when to disclose or to ask for the support that we need in whatever way that is, that comes more and more as you do enough self-reflection to understand where are your strengths, where are your challenges. I don't even want to say weaknesses, just challenges. And when we understand ourselves as being, we're literally wired differently. It's not a deficiency. It's not a disability, although we need to continue to use that language to get the support we need. But it's just this major difference. And so, to put it in mechanical terms, if you had a socket wrench for one size of a nut and your nut on your car was a different size, you'd have to have a different size wrench. And so I think, part of the problem is the profession. Like, it's this huge thing. And there's this expectation that everybody's working at a big law firm and that it's a bunch of cookie cutter soldiers. And I think the last 4 or 5 years have really come to show that that is not true, but there's going to still be a lot of catching up to get there. But I will say at this point, having just been diagnosed 6 or 7 years ago, really being under even mild care and treatment for the last 3 with the support group and working on steadily having meds, it comes down to understanding who I am. And then I am different. I am a weird duck. I'm not going to be the same as everybody else. And what I've come to realize in my life is that people either love me or hate me. And if they hate me for who I am, okay, fine, get over it. There's billions of people in the world, or at least hundreds. I don't know the count. And it's not a number I need to know. The EBTL, yes. The population in the world, I don't care. But I have people that like me. I have people who value me for exactly who I am. Some people go nuts with too much details, but you know what? When I'm on your case and I'm finding issues that other attorneys have passed over and such, like, I'm the person they want. I am
Absolutely.
that person. And when we understand that as ADHD attorneys, I think that's the beginning of the real path for excitement for ourselves and our lives and the part of our lives that is our profession. And so just every day working to better understand that, to better shape that, to get the
Absolutely.
polishing cloth out. So, I mean, I don't want to make it sound like I've got it all solved and everything else. Far from it. I'm 3 weeks into trying to get my meds. Not done yet.
Thank,
But but that's the way I approach it. That's how I don't get so depressed about it all, is just accepting that I am who I am and that my whole self is as pretty unique as my name is, and that's
yeah.
fine.
Thank you, Neva. Yes,
Mhm.
and I think it's just again the mindset, and the more that you practice that mindset that this is um not who like this doesn't define you as a person, and this is um this is part of you, but it doesn't define who you are. And so being able to say, you know, making the work that you're doing work for you, like the systems, and really just understanding from that perspective, because the more you understand yourself, and the more people are understanding themselves and ADHD and how that may look between, gender differences. I think the more people are becoming more knowledgeable and can talk about these topics and advocate. And I think it's just a natural progression of how things will change. So I know that we're already at 6:03. There's just a couple more slides, really great conversations. I just want to share these next few slides. And if there's any questions at the end, I'll stay on for a little bit longer and we can go through that as well. Um, so other things, material management, this is kind of what we already talked about a little bit, like what does your workspace look like? How often do you clean up your workspace? How many people make a list of the materials needed to accomplish the task? And this, I just want to reiterate that, our minds tend to work overtime in cluttered environments in order to stay focused. Clutter and mess tends to increase anxiety, and research shows that our bodies release produce the stress hormones cortisol when we live lives in a cluttered environment. And so, how many people have noticed the difference working in a cluttered environment compared to when your work environment is clean, organized, and only contains the materials you need to accomplish the task, right? Those are questions that you want to ask yourself, when you're going to work. And so you can pose these other questions that are on the slide as well. But, kind of think about, what does your workspace look like? Where's your stuff? And so here's an example. I always want to try to give a hands-on example or exercise that you can try out on where's your stuff? Find two places that you typically work out of and assess what are some things in that workspace that shouldn't be there. And how does it make you feel? Right? Just kind of exploring, when you're in your work environment, is it conducive for you to be successful? Embracing disorganization. It means taking things apart and putting them together in a new way, right? Organizational strategies should only be used as a vehicle for your talents, your uniqueness, and your strengths. And the goal is to begin to see yourself from a different perspective. So this isn't that you should be disorganized. For those people that have true differences with organization, you want to start looking at things from a different perspective, but you want to embrace that, this is what's going to happen. Instead of feeling as though you have to take on what other people dictate to you. What works for some people may not work for others. So again, it goes back to your own self-reflection and really understanding what your strengths are, where do you excel, where are those differences that you might experience, and how do you make it work for you, right? And with that, I wanted to leave it off with some discussion and questions. But I know that there's been some conversations and questions and discussion already. And then we have our takeaways. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now. And so, again, for those people that have joined, thank you for joining. If you have to go, I completely understand. For those people that want to hang around for a few minutes and kind of give uh, some feedback, that's fine as well. I know that, so I'll start with Dina.
I call my clutter organized clutter because I need, as someone had said previously, if I don't see it, it doesn't exist. So everything has to be out, and that is extremely difficult to, deal with. But if it's away, I don't have it, and that works in the home also. All of my, utensils from the kitchen, etc., certain things I use constantly have to be out. Otherwise, I don't have it. Does that make sense? So I say I am my disorganization, or my clutter rather, is organized clutter, because I keep it in, line, but it is still clutter. So I don't know what to do with that, aside from trying to become a minimalist and use two things.
When you're not using those the items that and based on your example, what do you do when they're not in use, or you're not engaging in the activity that requires you to take these materials out?
So say hypothetically at work, I have to keep certain journals and papers and memos that we get. So if I file them in the memo file, or wherever their home is, if I don't see it, I don't know, I don't remember I have it, and I don't remember that I can reference it, because that's how bad my, processing in it is, and my executive functioning. It needs to be in front of me. So someone also made a comment about, sticky notes being everywhere. Yeah, sometimes I have to do that. Otherwise, I can't, do what I need to do. So that's a big issue for me. So I have tried to have bigger space and again, organize
declutter.
Thank you, Dina. Yeah, you find a system that might work for you. But I think the biggest takeaway or some of the takeaways is how is this impacting your ability to be effective? Is it taking you, somebody was saying you might be looking for a paper for 3 hours when you can just easily reprint whatever it is that you were looking for. So if you're not being efficient, if it's causing some, anxiety, if it's causing you to feel guilt and shame and the things that we've talked about, and you're not able to really effectively function. And it's not that you're a horrible attorney, but just more of like where you struggle and demonstrate these differences. Those are things that you want to kind of explore and see, are these things, how impactful are these things, and are these things that I can work on? And how beneficial it is. So keeping those questions or statements that we talked about, what leads to change and motivation, and that is you believe that things you can change it, there's a purpose for it, those factors that we talked about. So I know, Neva, I saw your hand up, but I wasn't sure if that just stayed from before. If not, I wasn't sure if you wanted to add anything else. Okay. Well, it's been a pleasure chatting and with all of you, and thank you for everyone's attention on the workshop this evening. I look forward to our other workshops in the subsequent weeks. And so feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And as before, as with every week, Stacy will receive the copy of the PowerPoint presentation for your records, and you can look through it. If you have any questions, you could always feel free to reach out. And I know Stacy's going to be sending out a questionnaire. Please, give what you're enjoying. What are some areas in which the workshop could improve on? I take that all as feedback, and I think for Stacy and the organization, the association will also appreciate that as well. So uh, any information that could be helpful or what you're looking for in the rest of the workshops that we have together, I'll try to incorporate as much as possible. Okay. With that, have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone. See you next week.
Bye.
Thank you, Michael.